Hey, everybody, welcome to the Dream Big podcast. So glad you're with us again. And I love this as a white spot in the road for many of you during the week to reflect and think about things. I love most when you hear from friends of mine. And so Taylor Hughes, who's been a buddy for the longest times with us today. Welcome, Taylor.
And welcome back to you. You've been in Canada.
Yeah, I have. It feels like the witness protection program. I try to stay like one step ahead of the law. But it was up there for over 2 months, almost 2.5, with Sweet Maria. And kids came by and we terrorized lots of prawns.
Prawn?
And,
Like shrimp?
Yeah, like manga, like shrimpzilla. Yeah. There was one basket we pulled up with like 40 in it. I'm like, these are my people. And so they're like little mini lobsters. They're actually kind of cool.
That's awesome. I want to know, I'm trying to not hit this lamp. Last time we were in the studio together. If you go back and watch that episode,
I'm literally back. You could have told me to start barking like a dog, and I would have.
Yeah,
it was like so good.
It's mesmerizing. Yeah. I want to know because people have spent time with you. They know that you're not one to just sit around.
Yeah.
So what is it like when you go to Canada for a couple months and just chill out a little bit? How is
this great rhythm, Sweet Maria and I? Obviously when the kids are there, it's grandkid nation. It's just full on mischief. Then the rest of the time, we really like working on projects.
Yeah,
there's always something to be fixed. And so I'll usually wake up in the morning. The mornings aren't super busy. There's a camp that's next door, a Young Life camp. And when the kayakers come by, I'll bring 30 or 40 pounds of saltwater taffy and help them all summer long. They're like old eccentric guy throwing taffy at the children. But it's just kind of fun because they're like kind of tired from paddling. And then there's like, they get to this place and somebody's like hurling candy. And if they're way out there, I have a slingshot.
Yeah,
actually a pretty good shot. Then I'll just jump into chores for the day. Just jump on the tractor and do whatever needs to get done. It's really kind of fun. And then some writing in the evenings. That's been a good cadence. How about for you? What's the summer in your life look like?
Right now it's interesting because my kids are getting older. So my oldest just turned 19, and she's starting, actually today, she's starting college. It's like day one.
Oh, best, worst day ever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And she, it's a local college, it's junior college by us. She's still trying to figure out what she wants to do. So she's like, I'll stay near home. I'll save some money. But yesterday we took her because I didn't want her to not know where she was going. So I'm like, let's go to the campus. It's Sunday. No one's going to be around. And we'll just walk around. We'll see where all your classes were. So we're walking around, Katie and I, and both our girls are there. And we're showing Maddie around. And then all of a sudden we see some other parents walking with their kid. And I was like, yeah, they had this.
I
locked eyes with the dad. And I was just like, yeah, we know what's going on.
Yeah.
Crushing this.
I remember doing that university thing when our oldest daughter went to Seattle Pacific. And so you're there for a couple hours and they just, in a nice way, they boot the parents out. Right. It's like, deal with your stuff. Like, leave. And so I left. But at this old seaplane, I got in the seaplane and Lindsay came out of her gathering and I called her up. I said, look up. That's literally
you're flying over the school.
I'm doing circles. The hovering parent. She's like, Dad, you need a hobby or a friend or a puppy or something.
I could do that. It just mean be in the minivan doing donuts in the parking lot.
And then the last day of school before she graduated, I just showed up on her doorstep. Every kid's dream. I showed up and I just walked her to her last class. And that was kind of fun. So to bookend that and to realize there are these transitions, and whoever's listening is probably going through transitions as well. It could be through work or relationship or some kind of mile marker. And it's good to pause at those mile markers, reflect backwards and to say, what have I learned? How have I grown? And then look forward and start charting a path. Because if you're just kind of like aimless, that's not going to get you. I'm thinking of like, the Cheshire Cat. If you don't know where you're going, any path will get there. But to instead say, hey, this is the next waypoint. So for Sweet Maria and I, it's about grandkids and staying a little closer to home. We're like, try to find the things that we're doing that are a little closer to home. And how about you? What's your game point? Like, what are you aiming for next?
Like at this time in life, I'm trying to do as many things that I can do that include the family. So like anytime I can take, because I do magic shows and comedy stuff. So anytime I can take a show that lets me bring the family with me is a big win right now.
Yeah.
I just feel like I think you and I are kind of at similar but different points where it's like, the kids go off for a little while and then they have kids and they'll come back. And so I feel like I'm at this last point before they launch out to kind of do their own thing. And I'm like, just want to soak up every minute of it. So
Yeah. And then making that transition to say, hey, for the first couple decades, I was
right.
leading the parade. Like,
Yeah.
this is where we're going. We're charged up the hill. And then to make that transition where you're handing more and more rope to the each
Right.
child as they launch. And then at some point, you hand them the other end and you say, go do it. And so in doing that, it raises all kinds of things
Yeah.
for anybody. What's that feel like right now for you as you're kind of handing off the other end of the rope? You're not cutting them loose. You're just saying like, hey, listen, go thrive and figure out more about who you are.
Yeah, it's terrifying and also rewarding, but Katie and I, it's funny. I feel like every night when the kids finally go to sleep, which now they're older, so it'll be like midnight, we'll finally be going to bed, and some nights we're like, I think we really are crushing this parenting, and then literally the next night it'd be like, well, did we ruin their?
Yes, yes,
So I'm just in this weird kind of like emotional roller
yes.
coaster where
This
I'm
big
like,
sine wave. We're like, we're killing it.
yeah,
And then we're killing ourselves. And we're,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and it's funny too because we both have projects we like to work on and things we like to make and put out there, and ultimately all of those things you kind of think of like, well, this is helping the family. And so like I've noticed when the kids are doing great, like I feel like the work stuff goes great too. But the minute the kids are a little bit dealing with some stuff, it's like none of this matters.
yeah. Is that true? When
It's so
somebody
weird.
says, how are you? I do a instant audit. It's a great primer. Say, how's sweet Maria? How are
Yeah.
each of the kids? How are each of the spouses? How are
Yeah.
each of the grandkids? And if they're great, I'm great.
Right.
But that's how it brings us that idea of pausing, having some
Yeah.
things that you do that are like almost like checklists. When I was learning how to fly, there's a checklist. And even if I've flown quite a bit for decades,
Right.
but you still look at the checklist before you take off. And it's like, say, the flaps up, fuel
Right.
rich, like, you're just things that you've done so many times before, but to come up with a bit of a checklist. And for me, the first checklist is hovering over the people that are closest and say, is there anything they need
Right.
that I only uniquely can provide to them? And it could expand to your friends, it could expand. So what are some of the checklists or internal things you do
Yeah.
to just say, hey, how am I taking? I know your schedule and it's pretty rigorous.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you were like in London yesterday. I didn't mean London, Ontario,
Right.
Queen of England stuff. So, or I guess not her. But
Moment of silence.
yeah. But what do you do
Yeah.
to kind of keep it balanced? Because I think that's what people listening are wondering. How can I launch in it in a January 1st kind of
Right.
aspirational thing? But how do I make it through this week, this month, this year?
Yeah. I live and die by deadlines, and the same thing with like, I feel like with work, there's always things that are non-negotiable, right? There's a day where you have to go in the office and you have to do the thing. And with family, I just try to treat certain things with them as non-negotiable. So like if it's someone's birthday or if it's, there's a certain thing we want to do as a family, I just commit, hey, that's off the calendar. Like a few years ago, I decided I want to be home on Halloween. Like my kids love Halloween still, we like to pass out candy to the neighbors. We like to have fun with that. And it's also the busiest time of year for people who do tricks and illusions. Like magic shows are real big around Halloween time. So I could be working every single Halloween, and I just years ago said, nope, that's off the calendar. That's family time. So that for me, having those non-negotiable family times make it easier when I need to get stuff done with like a project or something I'm working
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. And not to beat up on yourself. I know there's a lot of people that have just really love their family, and then they're trying to pull off a demanding job and rigorous schedule and balancing all the different people that are coming at them.
Yeah.
I saw a picture because one of the kids had a birthday, So we found that like delivery room. Well, not the delivery room, but the rest up afterwards room. And I'm there holding this little 18-incher. And I see in the back of the shot, I'm this trial lawyer in this other former life. And I see in the back of the shot that big, huge briefcase I used to carry around that would have it seems like you would have the nuclear codes in it, but just a bunch of paper. And I'm not ashamed of that. There was a lot of time, mom's asleep, baby's asleep, and I want to be there. So I want to get something done while I'm there. So not being ashamed or beating yourself up, because I think a lot of people have regrets, some things that they missed, but they almost catastrophize those. They make them bigger than they were, like, oh, I'm such a bad whatever. And I'm not saying ignore those important lessons. I'm just saying let's think about what are we doing next, learn from those things, and move forward. I don't even know what it was that I was working on important enough for me to have brought it, but I don't feel like I missed out on anything. When everybody was awake, I was there, and when they weren't, I was busy doing something else. So how do you optimize your time without making the people that you feel the most for feel minimized?
I definitely do that. Like late at night, I get a lot done. Like for me, not everyone can do that, but for me, it's like, hey, everyone's going to sleep at a certain time. I could stay up a couple hours and get a lot of stuff done. And then I can be present with them when they're around, or I use time. I know you do this too, like airplanes. Most people get on an airplane and they check out or they watch a movie and it's like, I got 6 hours I can write or I can work on a project.
I
can edit a video, it's like, it's the greatest.
Peanuts somewhere along the way. Like I'm good to go.
I was thinking too, like you asked about like self-auditing. One of the things that's helped me a lot is I talk to my kid self, like my 8-year-old self, because I feel like when you were 8, 9, 10 years old, you had all these dreams and aspirations, right? But you also knew what was right and wrong and what made sense and what didn't. And so that's how I tend to like audit how's the family doing. I'll think about like, what would 8-year-old me think about my marriage? Would they be like, that's pretty great, you're doing a good job as a dad and as a parent, as a husband? What would 8-year-old me think about the stuff I'm doing? And sometimes when I'm like discouraged about, it's easy to look at all the things you're not doing or that you want to do in your career and your work. But when you look at your 8-year-old self and go like, man, he'd think it's pretty rad that I get to do the things I do. And how often the things that we dreamed about years ago is like, oh, if I could just get there, I'd be so happy. And we're not, because we're always looking ahead instead of just going like, oh, this is pretty great. Like, so sometimes for me, talking to that kid and going like, what would he say? I mean, if you saw the house we live in, which isn't an extravagant house, but he'd be like, you made it, buddy. Like you did, you know what I mean? Like
I'm thinking of the movie and like the kid, like, we have a dog.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. If 8-year-old me was like, dude, you got a pickup truck? That's the coolest. Like,
kid. I'm thinking about the way that we set our aspirations change over time, and the way that we do life changes over time, and appropriately so, because it's not about us. We're thinking about, you're thinking about girls. I'm thinking about this whole little growing posse of people. I'm finding myself changing a little bit in that I'm taking things that have the ability to turn into big distractions unnecessarily and just dealing with it. I was laughing at myself. I had this like dirt bike, this KTM. It just goes, you can jump it off a hill. I mean, it's a pretty cool dirt bike. And you'd never have like rear view mirrors on a dirt bike because they're like, but that's what makes it street legal. So the first thing I did when I bought that thing a decade ago, I ripped those mirrors off. This weekend, I put them back. I'm like, oh no, I've turned into the old guy with like rear view mirrors. But getting pulled over and then getting a fix-it ticket, and it's just easier. I can take them off easy enough. And fanning the flames on the things. The reason I had the bike out, we're going to go from Bryce Canyon to Zion on Friday. That's going to be
this Friday.
Yeah. 30 people. We're going to take, we're just going to jump in side-by-sides and dirt bikes and all that and just go. Had I not scheduled it, I wouldn't have done it because I've just got stuff going on. But the importance of finding your way back to who that little 8-year-old said you were,
Yeah.
and the role of adventure and having some challenges and some camaraderie and not getting sucked into like what is just the mundane. Do the
Right.
things that you need to do, pay most of your bills.
Yep.
However, also plant in there these things. Maybe it's once a year, maybe it's once a month.
Yeah.
But to find a cadence. And so knowing,
Right.
blasting off for this kind of puts a little skip in my step.
That's so good. Well, sometimes we wait, like we want to do all these things, but we wait. Well, I'll wait till I have enough money, or I'll wait till this opportunity comes, or I'll wait till I get this done. I don't know about you, but I feel like when you wait for something to happen, it never happens.
Yeah, deferral is not our friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I just went, so part of this trip I did to the UK, I did a couple of shows over there, but I just wanted to see the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, in Scotland. Every August, it's the biggest theater performing arts festival in the world. There's like 3,000 shows happening. And I'm like, I got to see what this looks like because we've always talked about going as a family. And I realized I've been talking about this for 4 years. Someday we're going to do it. I just realized, you know what? Next year we're doing it. I'm committed. Next year we're going to do it. Do I have, 3 months worth of income saved up for that? Because it might take that to take a month off and bring the whole family. No, but I've decided we're going to do it, and now we'll figure it out. And I think it's the biggest thing. It's like you said, if 8 months ago you didn't say yes to something, you wouldn't be doing it on Friday, and I think.
And then it gets like just underneath the surface, you find yourself thinking about that. It isn't an escape from reality. It's an enhancement to it.
Yeah.
That you have this thing. You're thinking, I wonder what haggis tastes like.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Answer, nasty.
Nasty.
So, Jay, for people listening, whether you're stuck in traffic or out for a jog or something, just pick a couple of those things, hang a target on it.
Yeah.
And then the enhancement, again, it's not an escape. It's that course correction that sometimes you need to remind yourself of the importance of play and fun, and relaxing and camaraderie, or gathering the family together. Find those things and aim for it. We did a little family trip just for 2 nights somewhere, and we had just the best time. We got a couple overpriced rooms at some place and had this kind of like central room in between, and everybody had the best time, just like getting a little pizza or some snacks and just like laughing and laughing and laughing until everybody dropped. I think finding those wide spots in the road, having something to look forward to, and all it'll take is just taking 30 minutes today and just planning it, mapping it out. Stephanie helps me organize stuff, and I just say, is there any way we could make something like that happen? And gosh, it's like she invents time. She just you could do that actually between here and there and be like, game on.
Yeah, sometimes you just need someone who's not like someone outside of the immediate thing to figure out what's possible.
Yeah. So that is, you may be going it alone, but if you have the ability to have somebody who knows you and your family and what you're aiming for, you can aim for things in the marketplace. Then also aim for things that are beautiful enhancements. If they know your family and what they love or wouldn't love, they could also be somebody to say, hey, let's think about that, which means don't do it, dude.
Right. Yeah. Just like you need friends to talk you into stuff, you also need people to be like, that's a terrible.
You're like, wow. Yeah. Have you given that a lot of thought, or was that?
Yeah. What bad decision led to you making this bad decision?
Yeah. What are we trying to overcome in your life? So finding a couple waypoints forward is really important. And you can have that kind of edge of the horizon stuff. Like I think a lot more these days about legacy than I did before. And I'm not planning on keeling it over anytime soon. But I'm making my decisions based on, will this last?
Yeah.
Will this work?
Yeah. I was thinking about, you talk about always people who like, someday I'm going to do this. We talk to people all the time. Someday I'm going to write a book. And they'll see someone like you're putting out your new book, Catching Whimsy, which is what number for you?
I think it might be the 9th book.
9th book.
Yeah.
So somebody will be like, man, I would love to do that, but I could never write 9 books. You could write one, like years ago, when you first wrote your first book, did you ever think that it would lead to 9?
No, I can barely spell cat. Still, what I want us to do is like find these things that'll last because
Yeah.
long after you and I are gone,
Yep.
these books that you've written as well will like outlast us. And so for a person like me, probably like you, that wouldn't self-identify as an author,
Yeah.
so I could actually do that. It
Yeah.
would matter. To need to find that drumbeat. I don't know if you know this about me, but I have this like this around too many loud blasts. And
Mm.
24 hours a day, nonstop, I've ringing in my ears. Is that crazy? Like
Is that like
24 hours.
tinnitus or
Yeah, yeah. So no breaks, never. There's always ringing in my ears. And yet, I don't let that like bum me out or distract me. My thing. But even like right now, if I,
Yeah.
because I'm mentioning it, I'm noticing
I
it.
notice them.
But the rest of the time, I'm just not noticing it. Just get on it.
Yeah.
And I think each of us have some form of that that's ringing
Right.
in our ears. And that
Yeah.
may not be actually like mine,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
could overemphasize those things and say, somebody answer the phone
Right.
constantly. Or you could say that I'm going to be so trigger locked in
Yeah.
other important things. I'm going to be so present in the conversation I'm at that all the other stuff just doesn't matter.
Yeah. What is it for you? Like, because I know we have everyone's got a friend who's like seems like they're always positive. They've always got good stuff going on, and you're that guy for so many people. In those moments, which I know have to happen when you're not feeling it, how do you get yourself back into a place of like, you know, I, some people who are always been hopeful right now maybe don't feel as hopeful as they used to. How do you find your way back to hope and encouragement
Yeah.
when you're not there?
Yeah, the head fake, when you have some pretty upbeat people, and you and I are just kind of wired, we tend towards upbeat.
Yeah.
But then we see somebody from afar and we say, how could life be going so great
Yeah.
for you when it's not feeling very great for me? Without realizing, and it's not hiding it, it's just that I'm just not spending a lot of time bottom dwelling in some of those things behind. And yet I'm really contemplative. I get super sad. I can think of losing a friendship. There was this kind of betrayal, it felt like at least. And we're just like, I bet that sent me into this depression I bet for almost a year. I felt like really depressed. I felt hunted. I felt like it was just awful.
Yeah.
Even thinking about it now, there's not as much emotion now. But I remember at the time feeling a lot of just like, what in the world? And like, I just felt so awful about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I still feel bad about it, but it doesn't have control over me. It isn't like the ringing in my ears. It isn't constantly there. I just go like, yeah, I'll just learn things as we go along the way. And I want to surround myself with less drama and more like forward thinking. Like, where do we go from now? Let's replace the drama in your life with anticipation.
Yeah.
So start plugging in some stuff you can really be looking forward to. It's not just avoiding it. I bet that there's an unhealthy version of that where you're just going, I want to
it's not denying
or
it's not denying that nothing bad happened.
Yeah,
It's just,
but also not giving it that kind of control over you.
Yeah.
Say, yeah, there's stuff that I probably need to own and learn from that. And yet I'm not going to give in to the power of cynicism in the world. And during this period of time where people are a little bit on edge, cynicism can take a lot of different forms. It can have as much power or as little power as you give it. Yeah. What do you do when you're with somebody? And the most crafty of the cynics will couch their cynicism in like trying to teach them, hey, you need to watch out for this, and you need to watch for these people are clowns, or these would be like, and without spending a lot of time hovering over that. How do you not give that airtime in your life?
I mean, you just described it perfectly, at least in how I've experienced it, because I think we've all dealt with betrayal or someone who was really close to you let you down. And it hurts on a lot of different levels, because it hurts on the personal level of, oh, this is someone who I believed in or was my friend or was a confidant to me. And now it's like, not only do you feel disillusioned by that person, but like you said, it can make you cynical of everybody else. And can be hard to trust the next person who might come in because well, they might just do this
So
same
you
thing
make
this other
these
person.
silly rules like
Yeah,
never love again. I'm not
right.
going to get close to anybody.
Yeah,
How do you keep that in check when you feel like you just got like,
yeah. I think it's helpful. It I remember the first time I experienced like a really devastating, like a heartbreak of a friendship, and I had no barometer to know like how is this going to go. But now that I've experienced that and I've worked through it, and a lot of talks with Katie and friends and therapy, and to where now it's almost like you can look at that situation and it's like you're observing it, but it's not like it it's something that happened. It's not something that's still happening.
yeah, it doesn't become your defining life story.
Yeah. I think anytime you deal with something really hard, a good thing that can come out of that is you realize, oh, I made it through that. I survived that. That thing that was really rough or really challenging or really hurtful didn't destroy me, and it didn't mean that life is over. And so the next time you deal with something that's hurtful or challenging, it's not it, you're like, okay, if I made it through that, I can make it through this kind of thing. I don't know if that's
Maybe doing this audit, like we're
yeah,
thinking about what does somebody uniquely need that only I could give them, the beauty in that to get outside yourself. Then do an audit of
yeah,
some of the setbacks and have I made rules
yeah,
that were scaffolding for my very fragile life at the moment. I made this rule to help me get through the time, but the rule is no longer useful to me.
right,
And it's no longer useful to anyone. It's actually kind of encaging me
yeah,
that I'm on the inside of this rule. So maybe to audit those, that be nice to yourself,
yeah,
to say, hey, look, you got beat up a little bit there, but to say God has such a bright future for us. I want to see might be possible if I busted out from those and didn't let that be my big
right,
defining story. Because sometimes people will have an event or a setback or something, and that's the thing they keep. They
right,
self-identify by that. They come up with the names for it. Or some kind of modern day cynics will start coming up with names to call people.
right,
And then you'll start wondering, oh my gosh, am I one of them?
right,
Like,
yeah,
and so to just be a little bit more gentle with yourself, just like you're gentle with the people around you, be
yeah,
gentle with yourself. Don't beat yourself up. I don't think God is expecting that these like huge breakthroughs are all going to happen at the same time, but
right,
say like, you know what, a reflective life, a life of contemplation to say, are there things I can learn? Are there things I can change? And how can I influence and not control the next person?
yeah. And to realize you have responsibility over your own actions. You don't have responsibility, and you cannot change someone else.
Yes.
I grew up in an environment where I was in a good way encouraged, like, change the world, make a difference, like you can change the world. And that's a good thing to believe, that we can make a difference in the world, and I fully believe that. But I equated that to, I need to fix my friends who are messed up. And for the longest time, I approached my relationships like, if somebody was going through something, it was my job to like intervene, as if I was like
Yeah.
if I was their savior.
Yes.
And I don't know, for me, like, once I realized like, oh, I'm not actually put on this earth to fix other people. I'm one of the things I can do is love them, but I don't need to try to make other people's decisions for them. That would be inappropriate,
Yep.
And so that's been very freeing. It's just in those moments when sometimes you're disappointed by people's actions, to realize it's their choice to make. And even if I'd make a different choice, all I can really do is love them and, try to make different choices for
Yeah.
myself.
And stay humble. Like
Yeah.
humble voices always travel further in people's lives. And don't be taking bows for other people's
Yeah.
work. I think of like some people will identify with this nonprofit called Love Does, and they think
Yeah.
I'm doing it. Jody Luke is the
Yeah.
one that's doing it, and this crew of people that are out delivering food and doing all these other things, and they like being nameless. They're not doing it for the applause, but you don't need to make a big deal about it, but get crystal clear about who's doing what. It would be so weird to go to a play,
Yeah.
and then you're sitting in the third row, and then all the cast and crew come out on the stage at the end,
Yeah.
and then you run up there and take a bow.
Yeah.
Stop. He'd be like, dude, you weren't part of the play.
Right.
You were part of the audience. So realize uh, when you are the audience.
Yeah.
And I love all those verses in scripture that says that God does this and does this and does this. And the punchline of it always, so no one could boast. But if we boast,
Right.
we boast about the things that God has done. So really get the applause directed in the right area. And it's not being like, falsely self-effacing or whatever, but to just appropriately get that focused where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to like not finding your validation in other people's opinions of you. Or
Yes.
I think about how, I mean, we both do things in front of audiences. We're given the opportunity I do comedy and magic shows. And for years, I would go out on stage and go like, what can I get them to respond? How am I going to get them to laugh, or am I going to get them to applaud or be amazed? And that's such an empty way to approach anything, as opposed to what can I go out there and give people that might encourage them or bring them joy or laughter, And I think we can all do that.
Give your best. And so that first version of Taylor isn't somebody to like get down on, to say,
Right.
You were there, no matter what your mindset, you're there because you want to make people happy. You live to make people happy. You love doing that.
Yeah.
It's somebody said it better than I can remember it, but that idea that if you live for the applause, then you'll die with their opinions.
Yeah.
Like that. And so to say, I'm going to show up, the best wonky version of Bob I can muster today. And there's 40 people heading up to where you and I are headed today. And to go spend 3 days and a couple nights together. And so if you and I show up and bring the best that we've got, the most authentic stuff, but the best stuff that's going to happen is going to happen around a fire pit at night.
Yeah.
Not what happens in front of people.
Right.
It'll be what happens in just being with people.
Yeah.
Isn't that an interesting dynamic? That most memorable stuff are those few authentic moments that you get with people. And the same is true with your family and your friends today. And to check in, to like remember things that are going on in people's lives and check in on those. I think that's the lasting stuff. And it creates this legacy of love and compassion and caring.
Just, I think about lately, when I was a kid, we'd go visit my grandparents. We go twice a year up to Oregon.
Grants Pass.
And we go twice a year, and I had the best times with them. But I realized, like, I didn't know the last time we went, it was going to be the last time we went.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? I didn't know. I wasn't thinking about that. And now I think about, like, we go visit my in-laws at Thanksgiving, and we see them a couple of times a year. It's like, if you do that twice a year for 20 years, that's only 40 times. 40 times. That's not a lot,
Yeah.
So I just think, like, the more we can, like you're saying, show up and be present and just give the time that we have to the people that are closest to us, like, it's so good. It's so good. That's something we can all do today, regardless of what our job is, what our situation is, what our schedule looks like. Today, we could just show up for the people around us.
Yep.
What a win.
Yeah. And then when you show up, bring your authenticity. Maybe that's the last thing we'll have time to talk about. But to just show up authentically. Don't be the person that everybody expects you to be.
Yeah.
If you're bummed, like, just be bummed. I wouldn't make a campsite out of that.
Yeah.
But if you need to be bummed for a little bit, then be bummed and have a game plan. Like, so I'm going to find some really safe people to talk to, or I need to just step back from people, kind of deal with some stuff and then emerge. But showing up with that kind of authenticity, because that stuff has shelf life in people's life. I've seen you. We've lived on buses together for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. We've done that with Stephanie and Megan and Sweet Maria and all that. And we've seen you guys like on and off stage. We're roommates.
Yeah, when you're huddled over the same sink brushing your teeth, you learn a lot about people.
And you can do one thing in the bathroom, but not both things there. So there are rules. And so to live in that community, what I think we've anticipated is what we found, which is everybody's about the same. They get the on and off. And we want to have that continuity. So if there's like the yippee skippy Bob, but then there's the Bob that's like being mean to little puppies in the neighborhood, then that would be this like kind of like, wait,
Right.
what?
Yeah.
We're not that we're all got it together, but how do you like approach authenticity? Because I think as we set people loose from this podcast, they may be thinking about how can it be just authentic. So what do you do?
I think about the people that I love the most and what I love about them, and it's the realness. It's the fact that they are the same person all the time. And I just think sometimes we feel like we've got to put on a show, or we've got to, dress ourselves up to be accepted. And it's our humanity. It's the things that we struggle with, that other people struggle with, and they relate to. And so I don't think you need to hide who you are ever. I think the more we can share openly who we are and what our successes are and what our failures are, it just brings us closer together. So
yeah, if you're ever wondering about the power of the influence that you can have in proximity to someone, I was in here in the room with Stephanie yesterday, and I yawned, and I'm not like a yawner very often, but when I yawned, what did she do? She yawned.
Yeah.
That it's like, I'm not saying you need to do it, and I'm not smart enough to know the psychology, but I know that is the way it works.
Right.
People will mirror one another. And so instead of mirroring a bunch of hippy skippy, what if we mirror anticipation and authenticity?
Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to? Not all the things behind you, certainly learn from those things, but what are you looking forward to and why?
Yeah. So good.
Well, you guys, you've been listening to the podcast today, and I hope that maybe something Taylor said resonated with you. Maybe there was something that I said, or there was an adjacent idea you had that nobody said, but you go like, that's my next move. So don't put it on a to-do list. Just make moves. That's what a movement is. A bunch of people making moves. If we make those in the same direction, you want things to change in society, that's it. And find your direction. Maybe there's a couple things that resonated with you, and that's a little bit of a trail of breadcrumbs towards where yours is. You guys, we'll see you next week on the Dream Big podcast.